Hello. So I had grand plans to do a big old rum lineup. Not going to say which one it is, but not the one you're probably thinking of. But that's not going to happen because I'm out of time. So instead, we're going to do some Bunnahabhain. We're going to do two Bunnahabhain head-to-heads. We're going to do an unpeated batch versus a peated batch. Bunnahabhain has seen quite a change in fortunes over just definitely the last 20 years and really over like the last 10. It was really sort of the underdog of Islay, this kind of distillery built basically just to crank out bulk malt for Black Bottle and a couple of other blends. And thanks to some great branding, some great leadership, fantastic presentation, it's probably one of the more, I don't want to say one of the more prominent brands on Islay because it's still not up there with Ardbeg or Lefroy or Lagavulin, but among that kind of second tier, like it's one of the leaders. Like it, and based on the provenance in the distillery, you wouldn't think it would be there. Like, but the fact that Bowmore, this distillery with an astonishing history and provenance, is losing to Bunnahabhain in the hype game, kind of tells you all you need to know about how well these people have been managing their business. So what have I got here for this first flight? I've got a Scott selection, 1988 to 2004, so a old independent bottling, 53.8%. I had an older Scott selection Bunnahabhain from like distilled in like the 70s. That was a lot of fun. That was a couple of years before the channel. So I'm excited to see how this 88 does. And that is going up against a official bottling. This is the Bunnahabhain 12-year-old cask strength. This is the 2021 edition, which I think was the first one. Somehow I just haven't gotten a chance to buy one of these things yet. But perhaps after this I will. I'm not sure you can see, but there's quite a difference in color. The official bottling here is way, way, way darker than the Scott selection, but that doesn't necessarily mean better, right? All right, let's see what we got on the nose. Okay. So, unpeated Bunnahabhain, despite its popularity, probably doesn't get its praises sung enough still. It has this really interesting kind of like leafy, but at the same time kind of maritime and like almost soupy character. So yeah, there's something in this that reminds me of chicken soup stock in a good way. So it's leaves, it's like forest leaves, maybe some like undried tobacco leaves, like fresher tobacco leaves. Dash of sea breeze, a little sea salt. And then yeah, there's like lots of like little magi, you know, the little bowling cubes. There's some of that going on. White pepper. There's a little bit of apple on this. A little bit of just classic maltiness. Apple sauce, really. Pear as well. And quince. We're doing the that entire family, actually. That entire family of fruit. Some orange peel creeping through. Something floral as well, but it isn't really flowers. It's more like coming through with the orange. Okay, so maybe it's more like a bergamot peel thing. So a little bit of a floral orange. Yeah, it's again, I'm not going to say Bunnahabhain is underappreciated, but because it is not. But it's just such a lovely, understated, layered little signature. There might be a gummy bear or two in there. Nice. On the palate. So this is circa 16 years old when it was bottled. That feels about right for the way this is behaving on the palate. Not super duper lengthy in the mouth. Like it's starting to get into the back of my throat a little bit, but not by much. It's still very much concentrated in the front in terms of how it's presenting itself. I mean, it's just a good example of the Bunnahabhain signature. You've got that leafiness. Go out in the forest and like pick up some, fresh leaves after a rainstorm and kind of put those things in your mouth. Fresh tobacco, but also, like some less fresh tobacco, maybe some burley tobacco as well happening. That bullion thing, the Maggie thing, that's happening as well. Sea salt, most definitely. Black pepper. Espresso. Kind of a nuttiness. Part of the nuttiness is like the burley thing, the burley tobacco, but it's also part of the coffee thing. I'm not getting actual nuts on this. The orange is creeping through, a little Swisher Sweets as well. Not as much fruit on the palate as on the nose. There's maybe a hint of like a pear slice in there, maybe like an ashy pear slice. Yeah, overall it's kind of much more ashy on the palate. But yeah, I mean when I think of unpeated Bunnahabhain coming out of a sherry cask, this is kind of the signature I think of. This is just nailing it. It doesn't bring the sherry notes as intensely as a lot of the official bottlings now do. And in some ways, this actually reminds me of like a better version of the old 12-year-old. Like before they cranked it up to 46% and before they really, upped the fresh sherry in it. It's got a little bit of that vibe. It's letting the maritime-y, leafy stuff shine through a little bit. I like it. I'm going to give that some water. We'll come back to it. 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess 4.5. We'll see. Yeah, I'll go 4.5. All right, moving on. All right, 12-year-old cask strength official. And immediately you were hit with just more active sherry cask. A ton of orangey stuff on this. There's some Grand Marnier, there's some tangerine. Chocolate orange, milk chocolate orange. But then past that, there's some, the same kind of applesauce thing. Pear, quince, and apple cheese. I haven't talked about apple cheese in a while. Apple cheese is a Lithuanian delicacy, which is basically boiled in apples. If you remember fruit roll-ups from when you were a kid, imagine somebody made an apple version of that and you just crumpled the whole thing up and shoved it in your mouth. That's apple cheese. It's great. Go find some. I'm not getting as much leafiness on this as I was on the previous glass. It's kind of there if you go looking for it. Maybe a little hint of like oriental tobacco. But it's really the sherry orangey stuff that is kind of taking the lead on this one. Yeah, white pepper again. There's a little bit of an aniseed thing, which is interesting. That maritime side, that is still around. So just a splash of seawater thrown in there. And that kind of like soupy thing, that's here, but it's not just like Maggie now. Now it's a little bit of like beef bouillon thrown in as well. And I guess that's also sherry cask stuff. And I would be remiss not to mention some dried fruit in there. What dried fruit? Raisins. Dates. A couple of prunes. Maybe some dried cherries as well. So, not... This is, the previous glass is older, but it isn't gaining any complexity on this 12-year-old here, although the 12-year-old is much, much more cask-driven on the nose. On the palate, that's a lot of fun, actually. On paper, these should be very, very, very similar. I mean, I know made in different eras, sure, absolutely. But, sherry Bunnahabhain, bottled at high strength, sherry Bunnahabhain, bottled at high strength, both in their teens. Well, I mean, 12 is pretty close to teens anyways. So they should behave kind of the same, right? But not really. Like this second one is so much more. It just shows the difference in cask management. This is so much more active on the sherry side of things. Very, very ashy. Very, very, like burned orange peel sherry stuff. Yeah, this is more of a sherry bomb. Previous glass, Scott Selection, is more of a really fun, delicate, subtle distillate that's been kind of given some color and direction by a particular kind of cask. This is a sherry bomb. We are tasting a sherry bomb right now. Toasted orange peel, ashtray, black pepper, beef bouillon, chicken bouillon, clove, cardamom, cinnamon, overstewed tea. What kind of overstewed tea? Overstewed Darjeeling, I would say. What else we got? I'm looking for the fruity elements, and there's not a lot of it. It's maybe some of the apple cheese is still there in the back. The dried fruit is definitely there. There's the raisin, the dried cherry, the prune. And in terms of form, I mean, it's a little bit more brutal, but it does have more mouth presence. It's really, the mouth feel is really peppering and spicing up my whole mouth. The mouth length is just as good, if not a hair bit better. Finish is just as long, if not a hair bit longer. Yeah, it really shows the power of like modern cask management, that you can basically pull off the difference in 4 years worth of aging by way of just having more active casks. So yeah, we'll give that a squirt of water, come back to it. I like both of these very much. And this is really fun just because it's such a stark difference in how different casks and different barreling philosophies can come to bear on the same distillate. Yeah, I'm going to go half-seas on this as well. All right. Back to the Scotch selection. Where are we? 15 minutes in? Okay. I'm still going to be able to pick up my daughter from take camp. Okay. That's fun. So it's adding water to the Scotch selection has really brought up some of the high tones. The orange is definitely still there, but it's almost become not a candied orange, almost like a orange incense kind of thing, like almost like a smoky floral orange thing. I don't know how else to put it. As if you ran a high pass filter on your orange, if that makes sense. Still, I mean, this is just bringing the leaves in a way that the next glass just isn't. I love the leafiness. There's a little bit more. Oh, what spice is that? Like allspice happening on this. There's more pepper coming out now. But yeah, overall, the big change on this is just that kind of like greater intensity of the orange, and also the sense of the orange just being a little bit higher toned, a little bit more incensey, floral orange, if that makes sense. It's fun. I mean, I love whiskeys in their kind of teenage years. They've still got a lot of the sort of primary immediate fruit going on, but they're starting to develop some of the fun weirdness that comes with age on the palate. It's not a great whiskey. It really isn't. The notes involved is maybe not the most complex set of notes in the world, but I like it. I'm really enjoying drinking this. It feels very old school. I like the leafy medicinal elements on this without turning into, full-blown chewing on bandages thing. There's a little bit of like a leafy Tylenol kind of element to this now. Flowers, definitely a lot of flowers now. Still has the soupy thing, leafy thing, cinnamon. The maritime note, the sea salt thing has really kind of receded a little bit, but I'm not complaining because this has stepped up its mouth presence a little bit. The mouthfeel is better. With water, the finish is holding on a little bit better. Yeah, this is never something. This is not the kind of thing I would score above 90 by any means. But is it the kind of bottle I would love to have in the cabinet to just kind of reach for and pour for friends who are, a little nerdy and enjoy classically styled malts like this? Yeah, I mean, I think that's what this is for. I'm not going to give this a super duper high score. I'm going to give this. Let's call this an 87 plus. 87 plus, which is still pretty dang high. I like Bunnahabhain, but sort of not going to change the world, but absolutely delicious, and just a classic example of what the distillery can do. However, let us move on to this more modern example. See what this does with a little bit of water. Here we go. Much more kind of black pepper, or even like whole peppercorns coming out. This is so much more orangey. Yeah, there's almost like a dark chocolate orange thing coming through now. It's a little bit more earthy. I mean, if I analyze it, that's probably a little bit of what I'm perceiving as leafiness in this other glass. But in this case, it comes through as kind of an earthy, dark chocolatey thing. On first contact, less change on this 12-year-old than on the Scotch selection. It smells mostly the same. It just gets, a little bit darker, earthier, more peppery. Still very dominated by the orange stuff, the sherry notes, the tea. Yeah, that's fun. On the palate. These are very close. They're getting there in different ways, but in terms of absolute quality, these are very, very, very close. Again, it's kind of the same story. Interesting distillate with a sherry cask versus sherry bomb. Like that's the difference here. Lots and lots and lots of black pepper on the palate. Overstewed tea, overstewed Darjeeling in particular. Orangey stuff, orange peel, orange candy. Chocolate orange. Different tobaccos. Black Cavendish. Clove, cardamom, coffee stuff. This also, loses a lot of the maritime elements when you add water to it. And, that's okay. They're very close. I could see reasonable minds disagreeing on which of these two is better. This is really fun. Not a huge step up in the mouth presence, but the mouth presence was already pretty darn good. It's an aggressive mouth presence. It's going to pepper up your whole mouth, but it's very good at what it does. Score-wise, I'm going to score this just behind the Scotch selection. I'm going to call this 87 flat. But yeah, again, it's if you are more enamored of like raw, aggressive sherry bombs than I am, like you would probably flip these two, to be honest. Like I go more for like distillate-driven stuff, but I understand. I understand if like this other glass is where you are. So yeah, really close head-to-head here. 87 plus versus 87. But let's see what happens with the peated glasses. So let's move these things out of the way. I'm going to have some water. All right, what do we got here? We have a single malt Scotch. What are these things called? SMWS. Let's just call it that. You know, I'm going to flip these. Hold on. Versus, this is a little bit confusing. This is a Gordon MacPhail pick from K&L. I'm sorry, K&L Wines. But it's their Connoisseur's Choice label. Now, I am old, and I am old enough to remember when the Connoisseur's Choice label was like kind of the junk of the Gordon MacPhail line. That was like the stuff that didn't make the cut for the better releases. But apparently they've changed their minds on that. The proof was already like creeping up over the years. It used to be 40. Then it moved up to 43, and then it was up to 46 for a little bit, and now it's apparently up to, what is this? 55.3% alcohol by volume. And this is incidentally a second fill sherry something. I will put all the information down below. And that's going up against this pick. What is the name on this? I looked it up. Let me check again. But this looks like an ex-bourbon hogshead versus... oh, nope, sorry. It's ex-bourbon hogshead and also a refill HTMC hogshead. And it is called Flirting with the Devil. Okay. And it's a 2013 6-year-old. So, but you can see the difference again in color. Sherry cask, not sherry cask. And these are peated versions, of course. I love peated Bunnahabhain as well. My favorites are the 97 batches. Oh, those really kind of modestly peated batches from 1997 that snuck out in like the signatory bottlings and stuff. Oh my God, those were so good. But the more heavily peated batches that have started to creep out since about 2009, those are good too. They're just a little bit more obvious on what they're doing. Anyways, let's try this Connoisseur's Choice. See what's going on. On the nose, immediately I'm getting some very obvious like maritime peat. So it's a clean peat. This is peat plus a little bit of sea salt. Black pepper. Certainly some like vanilla fudge going on. It doesn't have that so often when I get like fudginess in peated whiskey, it's connected to a kind of like barnyard farmy thing that I get in like mainland peated whiskeys. This isn't doing that. It's just like straight up vanilla fudge. Although there's a leafiness in this. Yeah, it's still got that kind of trademark Bunnahabhain leafy thing. What I'm not getting so much of, aside from maybe the pepper, is sherry influence. I'm getting the kind of chicken bouillon cubes. That's there. There's a kind of cereally grainy thing, like some cream of wheat, with maybe like one slice of apple in there. Some lovely like maritime mineral notes, like some crushed seashells. Yeah, I go looking for sherry and there's just not much there. There's maybe a little bit of black Cavendish again. One fig maybe. But really this is all about the peat and sort of little accompaniments to the peat, and I'm kind of okay with that. I was a little bit scared that we would get a bomb from the color of this, but that is not the case, at least not yet, on the palate. They're saying this is sherry cask, but I'm getting a hell of a lot of vanilla on this. It's just acting a lot like American oak. And of course, that's what it could be, right? I mean, not sherry cask doesn't necessarily mean European oak or whatever. It can always be good old Quercus alba underneath the sherry, and I'm pretty sure it was. Lots of peat, and it's intense peat. Like, this is up there. This is as peaty as your Ardbegs and stuff. They're not holding back, unlike with the 97s, and it's kind of what I loved about the 97s. So lots of peat, clean peat, no barnyard stinkiness here, no medicinal elements, but a little bit of bouillon cube, a little bit of like a sea spray happening thing. Bunnahabhain, like wet leafiness thing. Black pepper. Something nutty. What is that? Like almost like an unroasted nut thing, like green nuts. Maybe. I mean, it's a kind of an element you get in actual sherries, like the wines. Yeah, it's okay. It's a little bit of like a just a really relatively young Oloroso. There's a little bit of that note in there. No, it's unfair to say I'm getting sherry in a sherry cask whiskey, but you know, deal with it. A little more sherry on the palate than on the nose. A couple of figs. Mostly figs. Really, actually just figs. Kind of playing into the nuttiness on this. So, and it's one of those things that I will, to the extent that I will criticize Bunnahabhain, it's sometimes I just don't get enough depth and complexity in the flavor profile, and it's kind of happening here. Like the floor is high, but the ceiling is not as high as you would hope sometimes. I don't think I've ever tasted a Bunnahabhain over 90, which is kind of sad. But I've tasted a heck of a lot in the high 80s, and this is probably going to get there. This is darn good. Really good presence in the mouth. Covers my whole palate. Good length, good finish. This is gonna get a nice score. All right, let's give it some water. The one thing I would say is if you approach this bottling expecting, you know, a peaty sherry bomb, that's not really what this is. It's, you know, much more reserved in how it's doing what it's doing, which I'm into. I mean, it's showing much more American oak than it is showing sherryness, if that makes sense. Moving on to the young'un here, 6-year-old. On the nose. Now this is I didn't write it down there. 60.3% alcohol. There's a little funky funk going on. What is that? Jeez. So yeah, we're getting peat. We're definitely getting peat on this. But there's also like a funky grainy thing. So it's like it's like oatmeal left in the fridge overnight with maybe some like rustic mashed potatoes thrown on top, something like that. And then there's a little bit of orange peel, white pepper. I'm not getting the leafy thing on this, but there is the chicken bouillon cube thing. Black pepper. A little bit of vanilla, but this one feels very raw to me. Yeah, I'm a little confused by this. I cannot get over that kind of like funky, grainy mashed potato thing. Maybe a little bit of fennel. It smells, yeah, I mean, it smells a little raw. It smells a little new makey. I mean, it's not offensive or anything. It's just not what I was expecting from. I think this is probably, pushing 80 euros or something, and I wasn't expecting that from a bottle at this kind of price point. Yeah, there's a little bit of ash in this as well. It's a fine nose, I guess. Let's try the palate. You know, if I remember correctly, 2013 was one of those years where everyone was buying up those kind of like dechar rechar casks of peated Bunnahabhain, the Stoiches or whatever the hell they're called, which I kind of liked, and I'm beginning to understand why they picked those and not like conventional casks. This is a little raw. Ooh. Yeah, peat. Islay peat. Seaside peat. Sea breeze. Little chicken bouillon. It's fun. But there is like that kind of grainy thing. Oatmeal and mashed potatoes. And a little bit of like a soapy element. A little bit of like a like the runoff from when you wash dishes. There's a little bit of that going on, like grungy, dirty, soapy runoff, and a lot of pepper. I know that sounds bad, and it's not a note I like. It's in there. It's not throwing things off too much. It's just kind of like, it's there, and it's kind of bugging me, and I'm enjoying kind of the rest of it. It just comes off as young. It just comes off as really darn young. I'm gonna give this some water, and we'll come back to it. 2, 3, 4, 5. Not sure about this one. Not sure about this one, y'all. All right, moving back to the connoisseur's choice. Okay. With water, the peat, that immediate peaty hit, has kind of receded a little bit. And so has the that immediate vanilla fudge thing. And the sherry cask is starting to reveal itself a little bit. I am getting my beloved Swisher Sweets. That kind of like case tobacco kind of smell. I am getting a little bit of chocolate orange. A little bit of Turkish coffee. The chicken bouillon thing, the seawater thing, those are still around. Outside the peat and the vanilla fudge things, but with water, the sherry cask is definitely reasserting itself. And I would think with this, if you had the whole bottle of this, it would start to reassert itself even more, as you get halfway through the bottle. It's just gonna it's gonna feel more and more sherried. Okay, on the palate. "14 years old. More than twice the age of this bottle over here. And it kind of shows. And it doesn't show in cask influence. Although there is a lot of, not a lot, there's a fair bit of wood on this. What it's showing is in, maturity, and is in balance, in the character of the delivery, the coherence of the delivery. This is a very, I'm not sure if it's beating the previous two bottles, these two guys, because they're up there, but it's kind of in that same league. Again, you're getting a little bit more of the chocolate orange. There's some topsoil now, which I'm enjoying. A little more tobacco stuff. Fig on the palate. And the finish, not a whole lot of change to the mouth presence, except the finish is just holding on a little bit longer, a little bit better. Which is definitely giving it a little bit of an edge, in my opinion. It's not going to lose its head-to-head. Not unless this what is this called again? Devil something? Flirting with the devil thing? Not unless this really steps up. It's like this Gordon MacPhail is not losing this fight. What am I going to score this? I'm going to give this the same as the Scotch selection. I'm going to give this an 87 plus. It's not changing my world by any means, but it's just a good example of a really good distillate in a decent cask for enough time. And that's what it is. And that's kind of what I expect from Bunnahabhain, to be honest. Peated or unpeated. All right, let's move on. Let's see what happened with this character here. On the nose, that the off note with the mashed potatoes has kind of left the building. But the downside of that is it really now just smells like a kind of generic, bourbon cask, peat plus vanilla kind of malt. That's all it smells like. There's maybe a hint of like grainy, malty, sour stuff in there still. Yeah, it's no longer, with water, it's no longer, it no longer really has off notes, but it's become a little boring, if I'm honest, on the palate. I mean, you've had this profile a million times, and it still works. It's not my favorite example of it. I think the pepper is a little overwhelming. Yeah, so vanilla, peat, and some really kind of aggressive pepperiness happening, which is not my favorite. Again, the good news is the off notes have kind of left the building. The bad news is I still don't really think this is really worth seeking out. It doesn't feel that special. I'm going to give this an 84 plus out of the kindness of my heart, because it does improve with water. It really does. But it is DFL in this particular lineup. So the SMWS, whatever it is, this comes in last with an 84 plus. Next up is the official bottled 12 cask strength. And then we have a tie at the top, 87 plus, between this Connoisseur's Choice, the peated version, and this Old Scott selection. Both very, very good. And just great examples of Bunnahabhain. Fun distillery. If you're watching this, you already know about it, so I don't even need to tell you anything. Thanks for watching, and cheers. See you next week.